Eigenquestions. No, it's not in the dictionary yet. It's a word that's coined by Shishir Mehrotra, who's the co-founder and CEO at Coda, a new doc for teams. The doc that brings words, data, and teams together. One of the most challenging and valuable skills in the business world is the art of framing problems. Hi everyone, I am Pashmeen, the founder of PM Masterclass, where I help aspiring professionals transition and accelerate their careers in product management. What is framing? Why does it matter? And what are some of the techniques to framing? Let's hear it from a very special guest, Jeremy Olson, who's a product manager at Coda. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us in the show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Pashmeen. It's awesome to be here.
Absolutely. So, Jeremy, can you help our audience, our viewers, understand as a product manager what is framing? Why does it matter? And then the meaning behind the word eigenquestions.
All right. I think Eigenquestions, mysterious word. We'll get to that. Maybe I can start with just what is framing. And framing is the process of breaking a problem down into choices, trade-offs, options. And if you do it well, you kind of unblock your team from moving forward. So yeah, be able to keep going after you make a decision. And maybe I can illustrate by sharing a quick kind of story about framing a problem at Coda. This is actually one of my early kind of times when I was just kind of getting into product management. And we had this actually before I get into kind of the story. Real quick on Coda. Coda is, like you said, it's a doc for that kind of blends docs, spreadsheets, and applications with the observation that docs haven't really changed in about 40 years, and yet everybody uses them for everything.
Yes.
And right, so basically, Coda is like let's take the fresh look at a document, and let's try to be able to create something that's a document that can be as powerful as an app. So that's kind of the context, right? So now we have this product out there, tens of thousands of users on our beta, and we're getting to the point where okay, we need to turn this thing into a business, right? We need to start making money, and so that was kind of the question: how do we turn this into a business, and how do we price the product? And this is a product that it has so many different use cases. People use it for project briefs, all the way to kind of running their custom CRM. And so the use cases vary widely. It's very hard to price. And so there's all kinds of questions, around, how do we make this a paid product? But we found, and we struggled with it quite a bit. But we there was kind of a breakthrough moment. And that was when we kind of uncovered the really key question that kind of answered a lot of other questions. And for us in this process, that question was is it going to be best to optimize our pricing model for kind of making the most money and capturing the most value out of each user that's using the product? Or should we optimize it more for spread and allowing kind of the product to spread like wildfire in an organization? And I'll share my screen real quick. So the one observation that kind of led to the question was just watching how teams were using Coda. And we saw that one person would kind of come into Coda. We call them the maker. They create a doc, and then they're the ones that go share and kind of share that one doc with others. And those people come in, they start collaborating, they start learning Coda through that one doc, they start actually maybe creating some new pages and doing their own things within that doc, and eventually, they start kind of creating these new docs after that. And through that was kind of the motion of how this thing was getting adopted and spreading really quickly at companies. And so we realized that, kind of putting dollar signs on the share dialogue, saying if you share it with someone, you're going to have to pay us more. that was going to frustrate this dynamic that was happening within companies. And so that kind of led us to, even though kind of the norm was to kind of go the other way, basically charge for every user that uses the product, we realized that for this particular product, it actually might be better to kind of go against the grain and not charge for sharing. And so we ended up with this model called maker billing, where only the makers, those people that create docs, are the ones that we charge for. And what we find is that within orgs with this model, the one creator, it actually feels pretty cheap early on. That maybe one or two makers, they share it, and then other people become makers. And it's a long-term strategy because it kind of blows up for a while in an org, and most of the people are free, but over time those editors start converting to makers. And this model, I guess kind of the point, it isn't about the model, but it's about finding the right question was kind of the breakthrough. And this question kind of became a principle that we're really going to work on blocking sharing. And that principle didn't just answer this question. It answered, how are we going to, how much are we going to charge? It even what our go-to-market strategy is. Even in the product, how we're encouraging usage. It covers a lot of other things. So that's a good framing. Actually, doesn't just answer the thing at hand, but answers a bunch of other things too.
That's super insightful, Jeremy. I bet your product roadmap got influenced as well, right? As you framed this question, right? Because a lot of your
Absolutely.
product decisions, your product vision, it got a lot more simpler just because you had this question answered up front.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it really impacts everything we do. My team that I'm on now is the monetization. One of the things we do is monetization, and I think monetization teams don't typically work on some of the things we work on because we make money when people become makers. And so a lot of what we do as a team is how do we encourage people inside the product to become makers? So yeah, it
Right.
influences a lot.
Great. That's super insightful. Cool. What else? What else can you tell
Yeah,
us about the art of framing problems?
right. And so maybe I can share a little bit more about just kind of the why framing is important. Right. So three things I think: common language, option enumeration, and question prioritization. I'll cover those three. So number one, common language. With good framing, you end up with kind of a shared vocabulary that the whole team can kind of buy into. Because I think one thing that often happens with teams is you'll be in a meeting and you'll say you'll be arguing your point, and then someone will come up and they'll argue something different. And actually, it isn't that they're so misaligned; they're just not using the same language, right? And so they're actually just talking past each other. That happens all the time. And so with common language, you can kind of one best practice for framing is when you have a set of options, you name your options. So either it's option one, or it's like, or this is the maker billing option. But you name each option so that when you're talking about it, everyone knows you're talking about that thing versus something else. So that's common language. Then option enumeration. That basically means that with good framing, you have a way to kind of to be able to lay out the set of options in a way that you can bring everyone along. So oftentimes when it's kind of about avoiding the yes/no problem. Oftentimes when you have a group of people and you say, this is the way we want to go, yes or no, and that'll get you a certain type of feedback. But oftentimes that feedback can be, you'll get very strong reactions, which in some cases is good. But if you're not ready for it, people kind of they might be saying no, but it's not really no. It's I have something else in mind, right?
Right.
But the yes/no frame doesn't give them a way to express that. So with good framing, you have a way to kind of include other options, within your set. And so that way, when someone's talking about something, or giving some point of view, you can say, oh, is that option 1 or is that option 2? Is that a different option? Should we add that to the list? And sometimes when you actually add it to the list and you look at the trade-offs, they'll actually come to the conclusion themselves that one of the other options is better. But just that having it on the list really helps. So that's kind of option enumeration and inclusion. And then the third is question prioritization. And that's kind of what we can kind of dig into, I think, for a longer time, because it relates to Eigenquestions. But basically, this is the thought, and I'll kind of give a story. I was in a meeting one time, and I was presenting this kind of set of frame and the set of questions and options. And Shashir, our CEO, was like, I think you got the questions in the wrong order. I was like, oh man. Because ordering matters, right? Because you can answer one question and you think it's really important, but then you get to another question and it would change the answer to that first question, right? So you got it in the wrong order, and so that's kind of how we get to eigenquestions and what an eigenquestion is. And an eigenquestion is it's a question where if you answer that question, it answers a lot of the other questions. And it was kind of inspired by this this idea. It's a made-up word. Shashir made it up. But it is inspired after a real word, which is eigenvectors. So if you studied linear algebra, I studied it, but I don't remember eigenvectors. But anyway, there's this concept called eigenvectors.
I don't either. Yeah.
And with an eigenvector, it's the vector that's the in a multi-dimensional space, it's the vector that's the most discriminating, right? So there's all kinds of different vectors you can have in the space, and this vector doesn't cover all the points, but it does cover most of them. It's the most out of any of the other vectors. It's the most discriminating, and so that's what an eigenquestion is. It's the question that is the most discriminating question, the one that answers the most other questions. And that's usually the question you need to start with when it comes to framing.
Got it. Super insightful. Cool. So I guess in order to summarize, right, the three key steps to expert framing, first being finding the eigenquestion, which is the question that answers the subsequent questions. I love the word. I'm going to use it pretty much every day at work as well as in my personal life, I guess. And then I guess the other 2 points you're going to probably touch upon, which is leveraging pictures and diagrams, and then also making it a team activity, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Yeah. So I'll touch on those last two. So diagrams and how do you frame with a team? So on diagrams, we at Coda we love diagrams, and this I think. I think we were very, very disappointed when we had to go remote because we work on whiteboards all the time, but we found a way to do it digitally with tools like Miro and other tools. But I can maybe share kind of an example of why diagramming and creating a kind of a system for diagramming is important, and that is. When I'll tell a quick story. So back when we were not remote, we were together in an office. I was in this one space that was basically a whiteboarding room. It was completely covered in whiteboards, and it was a kind of a glass. There's a glass door so you can see inside. I was working on actually the pricing question. One of these pricing questions. There were diagrams across the entire room, and Shashir, our CEO, he peeks in. It's a glass door, so you can see what I'm doing. He kind of peeks in and he opens the door and says, "Okay," well, kind of just glances around the room, and after a few seconds, he goes, "Okay, yeah, I think you're on the right track," and then he leaves the room. And the room was just full of diagrams. And the reason he could do that, well, he's a pretty bright guy, a smart guy, but one of the reasons he could do that was that we had a shared system for how we diagram, and so when he looked at a picture that I drew, he knew exactly what it meant, and so I can share Coda's system for diagramming. It's color coded, so black isn't on here, but black is the question. So if you have a question that's in black, then blue are the options, and then orange is kind of the selected option. Kind of if you're getting to the point where you have a leaning, that might be the point where you have an orange. Purple, gray is kind of the examples that kind of make the option more concrete. It could be a maybe a mock-up of the thing you're talking about, or it could be just some words that make it more concrete. Purple kind of call out within that. Red is kind of the drawbacks of the option. Green is the benefits. I can show a more concrete example. Here, okay, how are we going to position our Coda 1.0 launch? Is it going to be the new doc for Teams, all-in-one doc, or docs as powerful as apps? And here you can kind of see, we have a mock-up for what would the landing page kind of look like or be structured with each of these different messaging options, with kind of the positives and the negatives of each one. So this is kind of a simplified version, but that if you look at our diagrams at Coda, they'll mostly look something like this, which has been a great, a really powerful tool for us to kind of share ideas.
That's awesome. A picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So definitely
Absolutely.
not a cliche. I think I personally enjoy working with diagrams, and I'm a very visual person myself. So I can totally relate to the concept that you just shared. But I think what's really key was the developing a shared understanding within the entire company. And I guess
Right.
using effective colors, right? You guys do that. So really impressive.
Right. Yeah. Maybe kind of to follow up on the point of framing is something you often will do with a team, and it's
Right.
actually it's really powerful to do framing on a team because of two things. One, I think we find that great ideas often come from unexpected places. They come from everywhere, and so you might not be the one that has the right idea, that has the option that we're missing. And so having a shared frame that you can bring a team along with, oftentimes you'll discover new options you hadn't thought of. Then the other one is that when people do have a shared frame, it becomes much easier to enroll in the decision. Even if you don't quite agree with the direction, you really understood where what the different options and trade-offs are, and so you're much more likely to commit to the decision. And so we at Coda, we kind of have a process for kind of how ideas kind of go get all the way to execution. That's with 4 words: wallow, frame, propose, and close. And this is kind of the basic framework for how we work as a team. So one on wallow, that's kind of when actually one thing I'd say is it's really important to know which stage you're at, because if you're at one stage and then and then it's not clear, people might give you the wrong feedback, right? Starting with wallow is kind of the brainstorm phase. You're open to any idea, no bad ideas, lots of divergent thinking. Just let's get everything out there. Let's get all the context there that's in that's in people's heads. That's often where we start. Then frame, you kind of take that and we figure out, okay, what are the right questions? This is kind of what we've been talking about, right? So what are the right questions? What's the right order of the questions? What are the options? What are the trade-offs? And I'd say this one is one that's it's tempting to skip because you just want to get to that proposal, right? You want to get to the point where it's like, yeah, we're going to go forward with this direction. But sometimes we'll spend entire meetings just talking about the frame. Are these the right questions? Are these the right options? Making sure we have a shared understanding. So that's really important. Then propose is kind of you've got a shared frame, and now we're saying we're going to do this option, right? And that's where you're kind of trying to gather sentiment on, is this the right option? And then finally, close is where it's okay. We made a decision. Now we're just communicate that decision out.
That's right. That's great. I mean, I think one of the biggest advantages of following this approach is that you're being extremely inclusive of everyone's ideas and empowering people to voice their opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So I guess again, to summarize the 3 key steps to expert framing. Number 1 is finding the eigenquestion, which is the question that answers the subsequent questions. The second is leveraging pictures and visuals and diagrams and developing a shared understanding across the team. And then third is making it a team activity, being inclusive and empowering everyone in the team to voice their opinions. That's
Yeah.
great, Jeremy. And And to all our viewers, if you're looking more details about this content, the framework that Jeremy just shared with us, you will find the links as well as links to templates in the description box below. If you enjoyed watching this video and found the content useful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more such videos. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Stefan.